Hi there, Doug from Blitzy. When it comes to writing software, creating tests for every single function is really essential. And what that does is every single time your product is built, all of the modules and libraries are tested to make sure that they still work so that the new code didn't break existing things. There's nothing worse than adding a new feature and breaking everything else in your application. So developers create tests so that their new functions are always tested. So what do you do with all of that, with all of the legacy code that has no tests, but are essential to the proper functioning of your application? You could take a team of developers to go back and write tests to make sure that those never break in future releases, but that's pulling your dev team away from essential new features. What if you could use an AI what if you could use an autonomous AI to go back and describe the tests that need to be created and have those tests written by an AI? That way your team isn't pulled away to create those tests. In this video, we're going to use Blitzy to create some tests for a feature that's been sitting around for about 15 years. What's Blitzy? Blitzy is agentic AI that writes enterprise software. The way it does that is it has an infinite code context. It reads in every line of code, up to 100 million lines. So it's not just focusing on one module or one feature. It's taking that holistic approach into creating code. It's matching the syntax, and it's making sure that the tests that are created aren't going to interfere with other things. If you're a Python developer, you've used pip. Pip is the library management tool for Python, and you use pip install all of the time. Now, I recently learned about this feature that isn't documented. It's called the require-virtualenv. Now, this would be a great feature to have documented, because what it does is it prevents you from doing a pip install if you're not in a virtual environment. We've all done that, and it sort of pollutes your main Python install on your machine. The reason it isn't documented is that there are no tests. And so we can see this issue was opened a little over a year ago in July 2024 that, hey, we need tests. And they said the reason it isn't documented is there's no tests. And so if you go back to this issue is from 2019, saying, hey, here's where require-virtualenv was added, but it was actually added in 2009. So this is a feature that's been around for 16 years, but it isn't documented because there's no tests. So let's go and use Blitzy to create some tests for virtualenv inside pip. So I'm inside Blitzy, and I'm going to add the pip project into Blitzy, and we are going to add those tests. So we're going to create an existing project. So the first thing I need to do is import in the GitHub repository for pip. And Blitzy is going to create a tech spec walking through with a detailed description of what each function module, how the code is architected, complete functional technical specification of what pip does and how it works. Once we have that technical specification, we can come over here and we can tell Blitzy that we want to add testing. Now we need to add a prompt. We need to tell Blitzy what tests we want to add and what Blitzy needs to do to create those tests. There are a bunch of prompt guides to help you build that prompt, but we've already created that prompt. And so we walk through what needs to happen. So what we're going to do is we're adding comprehensive testings to pip to make sure that require-virtualenv is properly tested. And we walk through all the components that need testing, the boundaries, what needs to be done. And some of the features in this test is that when the testing is done, it's done inside a virtualenv. So we have to tell pip, or we have to write the code in such a way that it's not testing the actual virtual env, but just that pip can understand that there is a virtual env or there isn't a virtual env. So we've got all that written into these boundaries, into the technical specification, and then we walk through, we need tests, we need the CI/CD, and then finally we say, hey, only change the code that we're asking you to change. So we paste that into here and we run the test, and through the magic of video editing, we have the pull request. And so after several hours, pip did all the work, wrote all the code, and we can see that there's 6 files changed, and it says this PR adds comprehensive test coverage for require-virtualenv functionality, and gets through and shows some gaps where this option, addressing a gap where there were no tests before. So we have 26 unit tests and 6 functional tests that were added into pip. I always like looking at the project guide, and what this is showing is a detailed document from Blitzy of what it completed. And it says that it's 100% complete. All of the code is ready to go and can be integrated in directly. It said this would have taken about 48 developer hours and that there's 32 new tests. And we've got 90% coverage for the require-virtualenv. So we can look at these tests in a second. We've got linting. All of the tests went. And what's important is we go back to the technical specification that was created by Blitzy, is that it's looking at all of the possibilities, that there is a virtual ENV, that there isn't, that VNV is required, and if it ignored it. And so it has to walk through all 8 of these tests. And so it actually does that in the tests that were created. Okay, so that's all well and great, but let's actually see, did it actually work? So we can see in the documentation, I've already gone to the repository, I've turned on a virtual environment, and let's just make sure we're on Python 12. Yep, we're good. So now we can run the unit tests. And they all passed, 26 passed. We can run the functional tests. Collected 6 items. Six tests passed. I'm not going to run the full test suite validation, but we can look at the linting and we can look at the type checking. Here's the linting test. All checks passed. And then the type checking. And they also passed. So this is awesome. This feature that's been in pip for over 15 years, but never documented because there were no tests, now with this PR can have those tests, and then it can be documented, and people can then know that this feature actually exists inside pip. For an enterprise, this is crucial, as all of those old modules, all of those functions that have been sitting around in your legacy code for years, even decades, but no one has wanted to take the time, invest the time to creating those tests. We can now create prompts, send those tests to Blitzy, and then with just a little bit of work at the beginning to create the prompt and a little work at the end to make sure that the tests are actually working, we can start backfilling all of the tests in legacy code that aren't there using Blitzy's autonomous AI. Stay tuned to this channel for more videos on how you can use Blitzy to improve your development team's productivity. Thanks for watching.